I am so excited to be in David Tanis' kitchen talking about your new book, David Tanis Market Cooking. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having me.
Tell me a little bit about this book, because obviously you have written quite a lot of cookbooks, but never structured in this way, where you're really focusing on individual ingredients that people have in their homes that they can use in a variety of different ways.
That's true, and it's also quite vegetable-centric. It has dozens of different kinds of vegetables that you can get at the farmer's market. Maybe you've never cooked turnips before. There are 3 or 4 turnip recipes. But in the beginning of the book, there's a big section on alliums, the whole onion family. And it's interesting how many different things you can make with onions that aren't really supporting players, but the actual main event.
Right, and why do you think that we've gotten to this place where we've sort of, you know, pushed alliums to the side, where we say, okay, onions, you know, every soup recipe, every recipe that you see has onions in it, and yet we don't let them shine individually. Why do you think that is?
Well, we just forgot, maybe. I don't know.
Forgot how delicious they are.
All I know is that when you have a pan of onions stewing in butter, it's the best smell in the world. And when you taste it at that point, you realize that's something good already. Let's feature it. But in fact, here we're doing a traditional onion tart that is based on an onion tart they make in the Alsace region of France that has onions and bacon and sometimes called tarte flambée, sometimes called Flammeküche, but here we're calling it onion tart with bacon.
Easy.
Right.
And when people think of the word allium, if they're sitting there going, what does that mean? What encompasses the allium family? What is related to our beloved onions?
Well, you have your onions, your garlic, your leeks, your scallions, your chives, your shallots, and a few other things, but mostly that's the family.
And so for people who want to say, okay, I'm going to take my onion and I want to make it the star of the dish, what are the types of dishes that you think do really well to sort of showcase an onion? Because it doesn't do as well, let's say, raw, unless you're doing like red onions in a salad, but sort of how do you approach sort of making the onion center stage?
You can make, for instance, a French-style onion soup. Braised onions are delicious too, so you can cook them in a kind of a sweet and sour braise with raisins and vinegar, a little bit of sugar. That's awfully nice.
Wonderful. Well, will you show us the steps to your onion tart?
Absolutely. So now we're going to make the onion tart. So I've made the dough. I made it yesterday and let it rise in the fridge overnight cool. And today it's got a beautiful consistency. But essentially what it is, it's basically an onion pizza, right? But made in this sort of Alsatian manner. So it has onions, bacon. The caramelized onions have a little bit of caraway in them. Slice the onions, I guess about a 1/4 inch thick. I start them out in oil, and I give them a little salt because salt helps to soften them. I don't give them too much salt because I don't want to dry out too much water. And I let them go kind of slowly. It takes maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes maximum to get them nicely browned. You can't go full heat or you're going to get burnt onions instead of caramelized onions, and what you want is that lovely brown sweetness. And even as they begin to stick on the bottom of the pan a little bit, the moisture in the onions will deglaze that little bit of brown stuff. So you get something that's very, very tasty. And then I'm using ricotta, and I usually roll it out, I let it relax a little bit because it wants to shrink back. And then I'll roll it out one more time to get the size that I want. And then we're going to put down a bit of fromage blanc. In this case, fromage blanc is fresh ricotta. If your cheese store has fromage blanc or some kind of fresh cheese like that, that'd be fine too. The cheese gives you a bit of that dairy flavor, and the crème fraîche, after it's drizzled over the top, caramelizes in the oven as well. So you get this kind of dairy flavor without it being very, very cheesy. And then we have the onions, which have been caramelized and cooled. These are a little bit warm to the touch, but not hot. But you could make this the day before or an hour ahead, anyway, in advance. This probably is about 3 onions worth. You can use as many onions as you like. If you'd rather have it be less oniony, that's not a problem. You don't want to overload it though, because you don't want it to get soggy. Then I'm going to put on the bacon. The bacon, I cut it into what we call lardons, which are just little sort of long bits. But I blanch them in boiling water ahead of time. What does 2 things. It allows us to render a little bit of the fat so that they aren't flabby and won't add that much more fat to the process. But it also takes away a little bit of the smokiness, which is okay in this case. And they'll crisp in the oven, so that'll be fine. I usually buy the slab bacon because I think it's usually, and then I can slice it as thickly as I want to. If you buy pre-sliced bacon, you're going to be limited in how thick your lardon can be. Sometimes I use pancetta. It's really some kind of cured pork belly product is what you want. Now, then I just have a little crème fraîche, which I'm going to sort of dab about and sort of dribble. And it's going to look a little bit funny, but when it comes out, it's going to look beautiful. So that's that. I think that looks just about right. Maybe give it a little pepper. At this point, we're ready to go in the oven. And the oven has been preheated to 400 degrees. It's going to take 20 minutes, 25 minutes, somewhere in there. You'll know when it's done when it looks done, basically. It just it's like a pizza. It needs to be cooked through and crisp and brown and lovely. So as you can see, it's a little bit rustic, but that's a good thing. And cut it in wedges. Actually, for a party, I like to just cut it in very thin little strips. And there's enough for everybody to have a little taste. So, thank you so much for watching. And this is the onion tart from my book, David Tanis Market Cooking.